I'm talking to Lea County historian David Minton, and David is also an author. He collects stories, he collects all kinds of information, and he'd be glad to talk to you if you have information about the history of Lea County. So David, you've written a book. Can you show that to our viewers? It is called Lea County Pioneer Profiles. And so what started you being interested in the subject?
Probably goes back to my childhood and going all over the state of New Mexico with my father, who was real heavy into New Mexico history, and that was instilled into me, and I've just kind of, for the most part, limited mine to Lea County. But
Are you? Yes. Well, it's a little bit confusing because the elevator says 1, then it says basement, then it says 3 and 4, and there's no 2.
right, that's the courtroom floor,
Uh-huh.
and you got to have a key to use it.
Well,
That's Old Central School. I think that picture's about 1919, and it was on Jefferson Street. It was raised in 1969. It burned in the middle of the night because a lot of people in town were upset that it was going to happen, so they did it at night. But I went half of my first grade year there while we were waiting on the new elementaries to be built, because Ludington's population was kind of booming back in the 50s, and so half a year I got to go there. I got a picture of me on the stage in some kind of program with a bunch of other kids, but that's kind of it. Actually, the cover of my book, I used one of the land patent maps that when people did get a patent on what they had filed on, they would write their name and the date that they got their patent on their homestead. This is around Knowles. I just chose that area, but these 36 square mile maps, they're for the whole county.
So how did you make a homestead? What did you have to do?
Well, the rules changed over the years, but primarily you file with the government the piece of land you want to try to homestead, and then you got to go in there and what they said was proved up on it. You build a house, build a barn, and make it look like, home. Usually 3 years was about how long it took to get a patent, and then it's yours. And a lot of times the husband, the wife, and 2 kids, they would all file on separate claims, but they'd all be adjoining, so that when they all got their patents, they'd have a pretty good chunk of land. I've known.
The book has a lot of really good stories. One that struck me was about a man who came out here and homesteaded. You even have a poem that he wrote, and the poem is so personal. Can you talk a little bit about that individual?
There's William S. Beck, they called him Bud. He was kind of a tall, lanky, disheveled looking fellow. He didn't have much, but he seemed to be kind of happy. He was a handyman around Lovington. If you needed something painted or some weeds hoed or anything, he'd hire out and do a little work for you. He was born in Murray County, Georgia in 1867. He came out here in late 07 or early 08. Okay, here's a poem that William S. Beck wrote, and the title was The Section Homesteader. I'm looking rather seedy now, while holding down my claim, and my victuals aren't always served the best. And the mice play slyly around me as I nestle down to sleep in my old sod shanty in the west. Oh, the hinges are of leather and the windows have no glass, while the board roof lets the howling blizzard in, and I hear the hungry coyote as he sneaks up through the grass round my little old sod shanty on the claim. My clothes are plastered o'er with dough, I'm looking quite the fright, and everything is scattered round the room, but I wouldn't give the freedom that I'd have out in the west for the bamble of the eastern mansion home. Still, I wish some kind-hearted girl would pity on me take, and relieve me of this mess that I'm in. Oh, the angel, how I blessed her in her home she'd make, in my little old sod shanty on the claim. And it's dated February 2nd, 1917. He lived pretty rough, but he seemed like he was happy, and the way he wrote, maybe he did come from a large home back in the east, but he's happy out. I looked through lots and lots of old newspapers. We've got newspapers back to the beginning, all the towns in the county on microfilm, and I spent a lot of time in there. I was in there this morning. If I find something that I know is connected to somebody, I like to send it to them so they know what happened in their family that they might not have known. She didn't even. Lea County, it was formed March 17th of 1917 out of parts of Eddy County and Chaves County. And the dividing line was right through the top part of Lovington. Gum Street south was Eddy County. Gum Street north was Chaves County. The first oil well in Lea County was south of Maljamar.
Oh.
On a Conoco lease now. They've kind of got a nice pipe fence around it with a little plaque. It's got a state historical marker on it. It was the first oil well in Lea County. About at the intersection of Stanlin, the bypass there, and they've got an old cable tool rig there and a concrete block with a marker, but inside is a time capsule. They're going to open that up someday. I don't know when, but yeah, that was there. They call it the Discovery Well at Hobbs.
Tell me about Monument. What's the significance of Monument in
Oldest
New Mexico?
Community in the county. There at Monument Springs, back, I can't remember the year, 1870s, 1880s. A fellow named Netherland and another man that were buffalo hunters. They come up over this hill in their wagon, and they looked down there toward the spring, and there was teepees everywhere. This is the story I'm told. And they just tied leather around all their chains so they wouldn't rattle, and they tippy-toed out of there and got away all right. Well, there was a monument, so to speak, a big pile of rocks, basically, where it was kind of on a rise, and it was to help people find water. Later, that was taken down and was used to build a shelter. I believe it's going to be back in the 1870s, and that shelter is still there today. All the different families that have lived there have tried to preserve it and keep it for future generations to learn from, and I'm glad they did that.
I think that you're just the perfect person for our Lea County historians. We're lucky to have you.